There are certain questions that people ask me that always trip me up. And they're always the simplest of questions, or so they seem. And one of those questions that comes up a lot is, have you made a lot of friends in LA? Have you made a lot of friends in LA? I'm talking that specific question, that specific verbiage, those specific words. It's honestly the most common question that I get when I tell somebody that I've moved from New York to Los Angeles. It's the thing they're most curious about, and I have lots of thoughts about why. And my answer to that question isn't always what people expect. I have a short answer that kind of deals with the situation immediately, and I have a long answer, which I don't always get into when someone asks. And the long one is what I am really interested in. The long one is what I really want to have with friends. So I'm going to give you the long answer today. Today, we're going to have the long answer conversation about this question. Have you made a lot of friends in LA? Have you made a lot of friends in general? We can replace the topic because it's not just about me moving to LA. It's about that question. When you do something new in life, when you go on an adventure, when you take a risk and move, and people want to know, have you made a lot of friends? Am I going to overthink this a little bit? It's just a question, Hayes. Yes, it's just a question, but I'm kind of obsessed with communicating with people in more thoughtful ways, and I want to talk about why I think that question can be improved and why I think thinking about the way we communicate with other people and asking questions in an open-ended, expansive way rather than a limiting one, I think that it helps our relationships. It's certainly helped me in my friendships, and I'm excited to talk to you about why. So let me start by telling you why I dislike this question. Have you made a lot of friends in LA or wherever you live, or whether you've gone to school, wherever you are? I dislike the question because there's a whole lot of expectation baked into it. It's phrased as a yes or no question. Yes, I've made a lot of friends. No, I haven't made a lot of friends. But there's like a lot of bias in there. The way the question is being posed assumes that making a lot of friends is a good thing. And maybe part of that is just the culture of friendship. And maybe not so much now, but growing up, there was always a dominating narrative that the person who has lots of friends is in a friend group is a happier, cooler, more popular person. And it sort of brings up a lot of that. And I think that when people ask this question, have you made a lot of friends? Part of what they're doing is like projecting a little bit about what they would be scared of if they were to move or if they were to go somewhere where they don't know anybody. Would I make a lot of friends? Has this person made a lot of friends? So I dislike the question for that reason, because it puts the person that you're asking the question of in kind of an uncomfortable position. And yes, like we shouldn't be so triggered by a question. We all are people of the world, and we need to learn how to answer hard questions. Even when the questions aren't hard, they're actually quite simple. But it's just not the most sensitive, curious way to have kind of a deep conversation. Like, think about it. You're talking to somebody who has done something really adventurous and brave and potentially alienating. Asking them, have you made a lot of friends? Like, there are so many other ways to be curious about what their sense of community looks like in this new phase of their life. The curiosity itself about what making friends has been like, I don't think is a bad question. I don't think that's an intrusive question. I actually really like the heart of the question. I think a better way to ask it, or a more inviting way to ask it, is like, what has friendship looked like for you in this new move? How have you found it making friends? What are your thoughts on making friends in a new city? All of those questions, I think, are really putting the onus on the person you're asking. Like, you're wanting to learn about their experience. You're not giving them 3 options to check, right? Sometimes it feels like these like really closed questions. Have you made a lot of friends? Yes, no. Like, it's almost like I sometimes feel that somebody wants me to exist. Somebody wants me to like be in the boxes that they're aware of. And it just makes me feel really bad then, or uncomfortable, when my honest truth doesn't fit that. I'm so much happier with people, and I feel so much closer to people when they ask me questions in a way where they don't actually have any expectation of what I'm going to say. That's really what I think it is. I prefer questions that are like, anything, I have no idea what you're going to say, Hayes. So let me just ask you this in the way that allows you to take this question whatever way you want. I'm interested in having those types of conversations. So Anyway, though, people are going to ask this question. So the short answer, which I will use often, and sometimes I'll go into a longer one, but the short answer is I haven't made a lot of friends, but I've made the right amount. I haven't made a lot of friends, but I've made the right amount. And I stand by this. It is the truth. I have not made a lot of friends here in LA, depending on how you count a lot. I'm not going to sit here and count them, but like, it's probably on two hands. But I truly feel like I have the right amount. I have a good amount of friendship in my life, and I'm happy with the relationships I have. Now, a part two to that I don't really get into is that making friends really wasn't a priority for me when I moved here. And frankly, making friends for the sake of making friends still isn't a priority. And I think I used to lead with that. I used to lead with like, I'm not that interested in making friends. Funny story, actually. One of my close friends out here, Natalie, who is a mutual friend of one of my college friends, Tess. Another question people love to ask is like, how do you make friends? And one of the ways I've made friends is through connections. LA has lots of transplants, and I found that when I first moved, like people were very generous in wanting to make connections. And Tess, one of my best friends, one of her camp friends went to college with this person, Natalie, who lived in LA with her husband, Scott, and they've become some of our best friends out here. Was it last year? It was last year or the year before. Natalie was having a birthday party in her backyard, a little pizza party. And Brian and I got there, and he went to get a drink, and I found myself talking to this person, Jane. And Jane grew up with Natalie here in LA and had recently moved back home from New York with her husband. And we were chatting, and I forget how it came up. I don't think Jane said this exact question, have you made a lot of friends here? But like the topic of friendship came up, and I said something like, I'm not that interested in making new friends. And I mean, can you imagine, like, kudos to Jane. Jane is smart and cool and confident, and we were getting along. So she sort of pushed back on me when I said that in the moment. She's like, oh, but like, I want to be your friend. And I'm so glad she did that, because then we did have the deeper conversation and went through everything I just said to you. But what I really meant is like, making lots of friends here, making friendship here actually has not been my priority. And it wasn't when I moved. And frankly, it still isn't. And I think part of my perspective on that is like when I moved from New York to Los Angeles, I had such a rich community of friends, but I did not have a friend group. Like I had, maybe you could say, my college friends. There were four of us that are still close friends. And when we lived in New York, like the four of us would do dinners every now and then. So that was a friend group, I suppose you could say. But we also all had individual friendships, one-on-one friendships within that, and we still do. I hadn't been a part of that like pack group mentality since college. And the happiest I've been in my friendships has been since I've left that behind me. I was not a person who did well in big groups. I am much more introverted. I don't feel, it doesn't bring out the best in me. I don't do well in like the large group dynamics when we go out. I don't know. I become like a shell of myself. I sort of lose my confidence, and it's just not where I'm happiest in friendship. So in New York, I was really, the 8 years I lived in New York, I was so deliberate about building lots of different relationships in my life. Through most of the friends I made were through work. And some of my closest friends today are friends that I made through work. I mean, you guys have listened to the episode with Matt. Matt's one of my dearest friends, former work bestie, now North Star bestie for life. And when I moved to LA, I felt like I have so many great friends, and I'm actually really focused on maintaining those friendships even when I live far away. So I felt like just because I'm moving, and sure, we won't be able to have the casual drinks after work or let's meet up on Saturday and go for a walk. We won't have that spontaneous seeing each other in person type of friendship anymore, which I do grieve and do deeply miss and probably try not to think about too much, but I guess I'm going to force myself to think about it in this episode. But I just felt like I really want to make sure that I give significant energy to maintaining those friendships via FaceTimes, phone calls, etc. And because I put in a lot of effort there, I feel so supported by my friends in New York who are far. So when I moved to LA, I didn't feel lonely necessarily because I still had the conversation and the love from my friends even when we were afar. I also wasn't necessarily looking for friends because I moved here with my husband. And I think that that's a really important piece of this. Now, a partner does not replace friends, but Brian is my best friend, right? Or he is a best friend. I have other best friends, but like, I think you can have more than one best friend. Brian is my best friend in a different way than other people are my best friends. Not better or worse, but like he's my husband, best friend. And our relationship particularly, I think this isn't better or worse. I think I actually had a really interesting, when I was on a bachelorette a few weeks ago, we were talking about our relationships a little bit, and somebody mentions to me, she's like, you and Brian have one of the most egalitarian relationships that I know of, which was a really interesting thing to say. And I've thought about it a lot, actually. And I do think that that might be true. And maybe I'll talk more about that in another podcast episode. But Brian and I are particularly like friendly. I don't really know how else to describe it. We work from home together. We moved across the country together. We spend a fuck ton of time together. And I guess we just like get along really well. And God, does that sound really eye-rolly? Like, again, he doesn't replace friends, but moving here with Brian, I moved here for an adventure with him. That was part of the mentality of moving, that we are going on an adventure together for probably about 3 years. Who knows? We just hit 3 years in March, so TBD. The point was an adventure with my husband at this moment, at this unique moment in our life. The point was not move to a city, build community, make friends, etc. It was to go on this adventure. So that was sort of, and I would only do that if I chose a partner that I really felt like I could just have fun with and hang out with all of the time. And look, that's expanded. Like since we've been here, if I'm, there are plenty of times where I'm like, I need to go see a friend. Like I don't want to only be with you for another weekend. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like I don't want it to be like, oh, I really only hang out with Brian. I really only see Brian. But moving here with a partner who you feel like is your friend, who you would be happy spending the majority of your time with, is different than moving here single or moving here with a partner who you don't feel that way about, who you don't have that type of friendship with. And I don't know if one is better than the other. Like, I think there's lots of different ways that romantic relationships work. This is how ours works. So I didn't really feel lonely because I had a partner that I could do lots of friend-like stuff with. So that's also a piece of it. I also wasn't really looking to make friends because my chart of how I can spend my time was and is kind of full. So like I did not know I was going to start Hello Hayes when I moved to LA. I had a different full-time job at the time. I did know that I wanted to start writing a novel, and like I wrote this draft of a novel that will probably never see the light of the day, but I really wanted to finish it. I knew that that was something I wanted to do while I was living in LA, partially because I was going to have so much more time because my social life wasn't there. Like we were going to go on this adventure. I was going to take this job. I was going to have this new experience. And because my social life was going to be smaller, I would have more time to focus on my work. And I did. And then things snowballed and I started creating content online and I started building Hello Hayes. And that takes a lot of time. Like, this isn't really the purpose of this episode, but I guess maybe it is a piece of it. Like, at any point in life, you can only focus on so many things. And for the last 2 years, I guess really the whole time I've been here, my pie has really been focused on like my relationship with my husband, which will always be a priority for me. My health and well-being, which frankly I haven't always done a very good job of taking care of, but now I'm back on top, baby. And my work. Like this feels for me like the time in my life to build what I'm building and to really do this. And to really build something, you have to make other sacrifices. And I know how much, like, I know what it would take to build a friend group. But even as I'm saying it, it's like, I don't want to build a friend group. Even, I think this is yeah, like I don't even want to. If having a group of 5 girls to go out to dinner with every week and like always have weekend plans with people, if that was really important to me, I probably would prioritize it. But it's not important to me. It wasn't important to me. So I didn't really make time for that. I didn't move here with that intention of like, I want to have a guarantee that I have a roster of people who I can text on Saturday and like someone will always be down to go drink wine at in the backyard with me. That wasn't really a priority. And because I was making a few close friendships. Like we moved here and one of Brian's best camp friends from growing up, Lucy, she lives out here with her husband. So like we already had them. Natalie and Scott, we met. Honestly, I think it started out really with just those 2 couples. Maybe for like the first year, they were mainly who we hung out with. I had made a couple of like awesome female friends through the internet in that first year. So we started to kind of casually hang out, and those have developed in different ways since then. But like I felt full from that. I felt full from having a couple of friends and then all of my relationships in New York, and then really spending most of my free time on Hello Hayes. Like when I was really focused on growing my Hello Hayes TikTok, for example, all I was really doing outside of being with Brian, eating, doing my consulting jobs, and like seeing friends, like every free moment was spent making TikToks and like thinking about TikTok and growing TikTok. And it was my sole focus, which is what it takes to do anything, I guess, out of the ordinary, like out of your 9-to-5 job. That's just what it takes. If you want to build something, if you want to make something, I don't know. If you want to have a hobby, like it's not even just specific to ambition or work. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I didn't really feel like I had the time, but more importantly, I didn't want to, because I do make time for things that I want. And I guess that's really what it comes back to. Like, I haven't made a lot of friends because I haven't really wanted to make a lot of friends. I don't actually think that making a lot of friends is better. I don't think my life would be any better if my answer to that question was, yeah, I've made so many friends. It's funny because I think a lot of people would describe me, though, as somebody who's really open to making new friends. And I actually am. Like, I am actually really open to making new friends if the friendship is going to really add value to my life. I do not need filler friends. And maybe that sounds harsh, but like, I don't need somebody to go out to dinner with. I just don't. Like, I have that. However, if I meet somebody and you like bring a new perspective into my life, or you make me, you just are awesome, we have that kind of magic kismet connection, then of course I'm down to make friends. But I'm really not going about every day with like, how can I build community? How can I make friends? It happens naturally. Does it happen naturally? It happens naturally when I put myself out there, and I don't actually put myself out there all that much. I don't put myself out there as much as I could probably. I don't do it as much as I could. And I guess sometimes I worry that it's just because I don't feel like I have the time. I know the type of time it takes to invest in a friendship and to get to know somebody. And I'm kind of precious about my time, I guess. And it's almost sometimes I feel like I don't want to waste it on like interactions that aren't really going to go anywhere. But if I'm honest, I do have so many great, meaningful friends here, and I'm not really looking for more, but there are some areas that I do feel kind of lacking, I guess, or like it would be really great for me to have some more like good, juicy friendships. And a lot of it's related to like my work and creativity. It's probably more like creativity and creative process and the type of stuff I do. I do find myself feeling kind of, I guess, sad sometimes that I don't have like a work bestie. I do a little bit, but I guess it would be really nice for me to have more people who I can just like talk shop with and who really understand I think I just want like a creative collaborator, you know? But I don't even necessarily mean that like somebody to work on my stuff with, but I really value what I do is so lonely sometimes, and I think it would be really nice to have more friends who do similar types of work that can be lonely. And I really want to be there for them and whatever they're making. And I want them to really be there for me. And I do have a few friends who are like this. Thank God. Thank God. I have a wonderful writing group, me and 2 other women, and I really feel very supported by them. And I hope that they feel supported by me. But I do kind of want more of that. And there's a couple people there's this one guy on TikTok actually who we follow each other. And I've been thinking about reaching out to him to see if he wants to get coffee with me out here in LA. And I don't know why, I was sort of holding back and I wasn't doing it because I was traveling a lot. And I said to myself that I was going to do it when I'm back. Maybe I will now because I think he makes really, really cool stuff. And I think he's really smart. And I always learn something from his videos. And he, comments on mine sometimes. So I think I think he would maybe want to get coffee with me. It's just nerve-wracking, It's nerve-wracking, but like I can imagine that type of friendship, like that could really add, meaning to my life. That sounds so like corny. Like this friendship could add meaning, but my point is I don't just need to hang out with people. Like I'm actually fine being by myself. But I am always open to meeting new people who can be like expanders and who can be an expander for me and for whom I can be an expander for you. So I just want you guys to know listening that if you are someone who doesn't feel like you have a lot of friends, before you feel bad about that, I want you to think, well, do I feel good in the relationships I have? Take away the pressure to have a large number of friends. Because I think part of the issue with the question, do you have a lot, yes or no, is like people assume that you either are like wildly social and buzzing and thriving, or you're like completely an isolated loner. And the reality is that you can really be somewhere in the middle. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't think I'm wildly social. And I'm also not completely isolated, but like sometimes there are weeks where I don't see anybody. Like sometimes there are weeks where I don't do something, and that's okay. I don't feel lonely those weeks. And even if I do feel lonely, I know that feeling is fleeting, and I know that I'm not actually alone. I can deal with that issue by the next week reaching out to get dinner with someone or getting coffee with someone. I just really want to challenge the idea that you have to have a lot of friends. You don't. And I know that sometimes with 6 besties theory, like sometimes people take it too literally and they're like, I don't need 6 best friends. I couldn't have 6 best friends. It's not about the number. It's never been about the number. You could have, well, I actually do think you need more than one friend in your life. I will say that. I do think you need more than one friend in your life, because if you only have one friend, we end up depending on that one friend for everything, which can feel a little bit like a chokehold and can push that person away a little bit, because, and not even actually push them away. Like if we can focus this back on you, it's challenging for you to only have one friend, because then when they're inevitably not available for something or they're going through something, it has nothing to do with you. You really feel that absence in a way that can hurt the friendship, because you might ask too much of the person in their moment of need, or you might take something too personally, or you might, the list goes on and on and on. And yes, all of these things can be addressed with like communication. And I definitely think you need more than one close friend. I think you need more than one close everything. Interestingly, I am monogamous, right? Like I'm in a monogamous relationship. And so much of what I say about friendship are like the core tenets, I think, of polyamory, which is really interesting. It's just like a really interesting thing for me to noodle on, because I'm very happy being in a monogamous relationship. And I actually think that I actually kind of think that like the way I do see friendship in my life as an extension of love, and like the friendships that are really core for me, there are many ways that I count on them in the same way that I count on Brian. It almost is like what I expect from my husband. I expect everything. I kind of have my expectations of him, and those are unique from friendship. Like I expect things of Brian that I would never expect of my friends, but there are some things I expect of Brian that I also expect of friends. And it's sort of like my friends help me not need everything from Brian. And though I'm not like going to other lovers for things, I am going to my friends. And in some ways, my friends are like other lovers, right? Friends are like lovers. Friends are like lovers. And I don't know, you don't need too many of them. There is no number that you need. And if you're feeling bad about moving somewhere new or going to college or whatever, and that you don't feel like you have tons, or you're looking at pictures of people on social media, this is where I sometimes start to feel bad. I do sometimes start to feel self-conscious, especially like I'm like, would I be cooler or like, would I be more successful if I had like more friends to post pictures with and like was sort of doing that whole thing? But I'm just like not, like I'm not the nighttime girly. Like I'm not. I like to be in bed by 10. I don't even like to drive late at night anymore. I don't like getting in Ubers. I do like Waymos because there's no driver in there and I feel safer in there. But that does make me feel self-conscious sometimes, social media stuff. So if I feel self-conscious about it, I imagine some of you do too. And let me just tell you that more friends is not necessarily better. So if someone asks you, have you made a lot of friends? You can steal my phrase if you need to. I haven't made a lot, but I've made the right amount. And even if that's not true yet, you can still say it. You can speak it into existence. I think that what we say is what we ultimately live. And that's my long answer to the question, have you made a lot of friends in LA? Thank you for indulging me on that. It's so much more fun to get into the long nitty-gritty of it than to give the short answer. And I know that with you guys, we can always dive in. I know some people might be like, hey, this isn't that deep. It's just a question. People don't mean anything by it. But I don't know. I think our words carry meaning. And I love chatting about them with you and being nerdy and overthinking. We are some overthinkers over here, but that's exactly how I like it. And we're in it together. And if there are other simple questions that you have a long answer to, send them to me. Comment on this video and maybe I will do an episode on it if I too have a long answer that I'm desperate to share. I hope you liked this episode of Hello Haze. If you did, we have new episodes every Tuesday. You can watch on Spotify and YouTube. Make sure you follow or subscribe there to not miss anything new. And of course, you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, I'll see you next week. Bye.